The Hero's Journey, a Mindful Accord podcast with your host, Rich Decker.
Hello, and thank you for taking some of your valuable time to listen to the show. If you enjoy this show and have been inspired by this episode or another episode, I would encourage you to join our Patreon page. For those who are unfamiliar with Patreon, it's a platform that allows artists and content creators to build relationships with their audience, while at the same time earning enough money to keep providing the content. When you join our community, you will gain access to exclusive content such as live guest Q&As, behind the scenes, and other exclusive offers. And you can join for as little as $1 per month. There's a link in the show notes that'll take you directly to our page. My guest on this episode is Louie Bischoff. Louie is the founder of Next Right Thing Marketing. Next Right Thing Marketing is a company that helps small businesses plan and manage the complicated world of digital marketing. Louie is an award-winning adjunct faculty member at the Thunderbird Graduate School, where she has taught business communication and business writing. She also lived overseas in Taiwan for 6 years while teaching business communications with international companies. In addition to her MBA in international management, she has her BA in broadcast journalism and English from the University of Arizona. Now, if you know anything about the 12-step program, then you may recognize the name of her company. Louie hit a deep bottom in her life only to rise and share the lessons she has learned from her journey. In addition, some of the things we discuss are the current state of journalism and the big data companies and data rights. And except for those who live in a cave somewhere with no devices, this issue affects all of us. This is the hero's journey of Louie Bischoff. Enjoy. Well, thank you, Louie. Thank you for joining us on the Hero's Journey podcast. I'm excited to hear your story and your journey, and especially with what your expertise is in the digital marketing world and this evolving technology that is we're all involved in. But let's start at the beginning of your story. Can you tell us a little bit about your childhood and family, where you grew up, and what's a principle that your parents or someone that you grew up with instilled in you that you carry with you today, and how has it affected your life?
Thank you. I appreciate the introduction and really looking forward to the opportunity of spending some time with you and your listeners to kind of give you a little bit more insight into myself and have the chance here to just kind of share more about my thoughts and my hero's journey, as you say. Thank you again for that. To answer your question, one of the principles I would say that I learned from my parents growing up was, and that wasn't anything that I heard, it was certainly something that I saw all the time. My parents were self-employed, and my grandparents were self-employed, and my great-grandparents were self-employed as well. And I think what just all of that trickle-down effect, what I saw all the time was being able to see difficulties or face adversity and continue to move forward through that. So my parents were in their early 20s when I was born, and I have two younger brothers. And I'd say maybe when I was about like 6 or 7 is when they started building their business. And so when I started going into school and they started to build their business and just kind of be focusing on that. And I would say that principle would be, as I said, just to the tenacity and the just keep showing up and keep on keeping on, as they say, through whatever difficulties come up. That was, I said, that's not anything that they ever said, but that's what was modeled to me on a continuous basis. And I would say that it affects my life because now I'm at this place in 2019 where I'm focusing on my own business and being self-employed and being an entrepreneur and being able to build that up. And there are certainly days, and I know that you can probably relate to this, and a lot of people can relate to this, if not everyone. There are a lot of days where, life is difficult, and especially being a solopreneur and going forward by yourself every day. I know that for myself and through things I've learned, and even in growing up, I can't do it all alone. So I definitely move through life every day now in consultation with others, having a fellowship, not fellowship, but having support around me, having community around me, being able to move forward like that. And that's a lot of the stuff that I saw and that I learned from my parents, the family that I grew up in. I grew up here in Phoenix and around Central Phoenix area. As I said, I've got two younger brothers. We were all pretty close in age. Had an opportunity to go to Catholic school for 6 years, so junior high school through high school. I went to actually a private all girls Catholic high school for high school. For high school. In retrospect, I think that was a really great learning experience because all of the leaders were women. Of course, I went to a girls' school. So every single person who was a leader at the school was a female. And so I've never had in my mind that I couldn't do something simply because of my gender. I've always had in my mind that maybe I can't do something because of my skill set or my own self-doubt, but not anything of like, oh, women don't do that or females don't do that. So I think that that was certainly, looking back on that, that's a big foundation, I believe, also of being able just to have the comfort and confidence that I have today. I went to college in Tucson at University of Arizona. My family actually has been in the Southwest a long time. On my mother's side in Arizona, I was actually third generation to go to the U of A in Tucson. Her dad and her family had come into Arizona around the turn of the last century. So we've been in the Arizona for more than 100 years now. On my father's side of the family and his mother's side, my paternal grandmother, her family has been in the Southwest, in the New Mexico area, in Arizona area for more than 200 years. So just a lot of history and a lot of family dynamics that surround the Southwest. And in fact, that is what my parents did for their business, was retail stores for Southwestern Indian arts and crafts and cowboy stuff as well. And my grandparents had wholesale commercial bakery and make bread. My brother actually still is in that family business and deliver it out to the reservations all around Gallup, New Mexico. And my great grandparents had a trading post up in the Navajo reservation in Chinle, Arizona. So in fact, that's where my parents met. My dad was working for his grandparents that summer at the trading post. My mom was teaching on the reservation, and that's where they've met. So got a lot of family history in these two states right here between Arizona and New Mexico, going back many, 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 many years.
And for those that don't know, if you don't live in Phoenix or Arizona, to have those deep kind of roots is rare, because almost everyone you meet here is from somewhere else, I'm myself included. But I want to go back one thing when you talked about, now you're the third generation of small business, solopreneur, entrepreneur type of person. But from your standpoint, getting started, from a mindset point of view, what's been the most difficult part of that, and how have you overcome it?
Well, I believe that for me, and I don't believe that I'm unique in this, the most difficult mindset aspect to get over was simply that feeling of I can do this, that I'm quote unquote qualified enough to be able to do this. And again, going back to the self doubts and just the fears about being able to move forward. As I said, I know I'm not unique in that because I talk to a lot of other people, and when they're being honest and they're being authentic, those are the things that they say to me as well, and that I hear from other people. To get over that for myself, what I do is I move forward each day. I have a lot of strong support around me, which I'm very fortunate about. I move forward each day and reach out to people that I know care about me. And I don't mean family. My family, they care about me and they want me to succeed, but much more along the lines of friendships that I've created and relationships that I've created with others who are like-minded. And I don't mean just like-minded in mindset or political outlooks or anything like that, but like-minded in wanting to become a better version of myself every day, pushing myself through those areas and times of discomfort. And what I've done is, today I call other people and I talk to them. I have a business mentor, a business coach. I was on the phone with her earlier this morning. She knows that I was going to be doing this interview. And so I wanted to work with her and just have that consultation and have that confidence and again, be true and be authentic, saying, hey, this is how I'm feeling, and have her to be someone who has more experience give me some tips and ideas and some comfort and some support around that. That's the biggest thing that I've learned and that I would suggest to anyone regarding anything is that you can't do it alone, and being able to recognize that and push through the fear. And fear used to rule my life. I didn't know that it did. I can see that now, but I had made so many decisions just off of fear, what other people wanted me to do, or expectations, or the shoulds, or the ideas, and was just being so driven by that 4-letter word, FEAR. And today, that's just not the case. As I said, I recognize my discomfort. I recognize my failings, and I call other people and I ask other people for advice or input, or just to be a listening ear. One of my girlfriends, I'll reach out to her and she says, Louie, do you want me to bring my tissue box or do you want me to bring a toolbox? Which one do you need today? I'll say, I need a toolbox. Okay, so let's talk about advice. Or I'll say, I need a tissue box. And she'll say, okay, I'm just here to lend a listening ear. And that's, I'm very grateful for that type of support that I have around me each day.
Well, I think it's very important. There is, I guess you're a solopreneur, but really you can't do all this by yourself. It's just impossible. And I don't know about you, but I still have almost daily. I think God, I can't do this. I shouldn't be doing this. I should be doing something else. So you need that support to keep you going, to get past yourself. Really.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have to tell you, my mom is my mom. My mom loves me because that's what mom's jobs are. But my mom is like, are you sure you don't want to go get a job? Maybe you should go get a job. So I minimize my conversations with my mom to about 5 or 10 seconds. And I have extended conversations with people like my business mentor who will keep me on the phone and keep pushing me to become better and better and better for myself and get me out of that comfort zone. And keep moving me through the discomfort zone and letting me know that I'll be okay, that I've got the skills that it takes.
That's critically important to your environment when you're trying, really with anything. Your environment is influences you way more than you realize. But when you're trying to do what you're trying to do, what I'm trying to do, what other people that are small business owners or solopreneurs or entrepreneurs, if you don't have that support system, I mean, you beat yourself up enough as it is, but if you don't have someone supporting you, you're in trouble.
Yes.
So you grew up in again, the deep roots in Arizona. As you're growing up with your family and stuff, I'm sure your parents, since they had a retail business, they were always working. Is that a fair assessment?
Yes, all the time.
So when you were growing up, what did you want to be when you were growing up? Did you want to get away from that, or what did you envision for yourself as a child? Some of us want to be, the typical fireman, policeman, whatever, rock star, whatever. What did you want to be?
Well, I didn't want to be self-employed. But it wasn't like I was like, oh, I don't want to do that. But it was definitely just not in my peripheral vision or in the front of my vision either. I'm like, I want to be self-employed. Growing up, at the time, I remember looking back at even at my notes, like those little school books and stuff like that. Time and time again, I think it was written down that I wanted to be a teacher. And if you think about what a teacher does, a teacher is someone that has some knowledge or some skill that is imparting that to other people so that they can have that knowledge or skill. And that actually is a lot of where I am today and what I do today. So the work that I do in digital marketing today, I'd say that a large part of what I want to do in my heart and the way that I move through, the way that I show up in that is being able to impart my skill and my knowledge and my information to other people in business, to be able to enlighten them and provide them with skills and tools that they can use to be able to help their business succeed also. My zone of genius is with Facebook and Instagram advertising, and those platforms are not simple. While they seem simple to post a picture or comment on something or give someone a smiley face or a heart or a thumbs up, there's a lot more complexity to it as a business if you want to use those platforms. So again, being able to share my knowledge and information to other people to have them to rise up in a higher level for themselves as well.
Well, you're definitely a teacher now with what you're doing. But going back to when you went to U of A, you got a degree in journalism. What did you want to do with that?
I had an opportunity when I was at school there. I had an opportunity to be a news writer for radio. So my internship was in being a news writer for radio in a couple different stations. So being able to hone those writing skills, not only in school, but then in a practical environment. And after school, I actually had a little bit of an opportunity and a little bit of some time being able to, again, work in that same area, working in news writing, news reporting, in radio, which was a little bit different. I mean, it's a lot different than writing newspaper articles and stuff, but it's different in the sense of that it's a lot because they have to be much tighter. The news stories on radio have to just be a few seconds long versus, several column inches. So, that's what I was, wanting to do and direction of wanting to do that. My minor was in English. And so having those strengthened writing skills, allowed me just to be able to, feel much more comfortable, in using words and grammar and direction to express myself or to help, tell a story. And that's actually one thing, Rich, that I also have seen about myself and noticed a pattern is just like, I really love stories and I'm not a storyteller though. That is something kind of, off to the side in my little dreams that I'd like to get better at is being able to tell stories, but I'm not a bad storyteller, but, definitely something I can get better at, but I just love stories and appreciate that with journalism. Appreciate that in news, appreciate that, in lots of areas. I listen to a lot of stories, on podcasts or, go to like live storytelling events and things like that too. So it's just really something fun for me just to learn more about other people by being involved in stories. So part of that about the journalism and about the, putting those in tandem with words and seeing what that looks like. From actually with the combination of the journalism and the English, after I had finished college for a couple of years, as I said, I went to, China and in Taiwan specifically and stayed there. And I actually, was able to pretty easily, and I know it's pretty easy for a lot of people, but really easy, um, pretty easily to get started there and teaching English as a second language and tutoring English to, private clients and in businesses and in schools there. So it was just, and also worked on some English language magazines and writing articles. So just a lot of great opportunities to be able to use the skill sets that I learned, at U of A in journalism and in English and being able to kind of partner them all together and putting things together so I could put a noun and a verb and an adjective together and hopefully that it makes sense on a piece of paper.
Well, that's important. When you went to school, this is before the current state we're in, where this massive amount of information. What's your views on the state of journalism today? And the reason I ask you is I stopped watching the news for the most part a few years ago, just because I don't know what's true, what's not true or what is just pure propaganda. And I don't have the time to disseminate that. So what's your view on the state of journalism and this 24-hour news channels or fake news and all that?
Yeah, that's a great question. And thank you for that question. Actually, I just read an article this morning and I'm paraphrasing the article, but it basically said kind of like the 10 worst majors to have in college these days. And journalism was one of those majors. And the reason why is like, it's basically the point is like, it doesn't really exist kind of anymore. It does, but it doesn't. So they were just saying, like, if you're going to study journalism, maybe back that up with additional marketing or business or some other different areas. But the reason why I'm saying that is, like you said, journalism that I learned and that was taught to me. It doesn't mean journalism's dead. That's not it at all. That was just the information on the article, and I'm paraphrasing the information. But it is that it's a different world. Just like you said, it's a different world. So the aspects, my feeling is it's, to me, sitting here and looking back or looking at people who are in their 20s coming out of school and that are coming out as journalists. One is that it's really easy to become a quote unquote journalist, only in the sense because the internet is open to anyone. So anyone can become a blogger. And then in that sense, you're a writer. You're some type of a person that's involved in media because you're on the media of wherever you're publishing. However, you're not really able to go into traditional journalism because, again, those jobs don't exist. My personal opinion, I think now is probably an amazingly exciting time to be a journalist. And paying attention to news simply because in August of 2019 and the direction that we are in with the United States, not taking a side one way or the other, but the news changes all the time. And not only does the news change all the time, but what information was stated yesterday may not be the information that was stated today. So there's a lot of opportunity for people to become very creative and very intense about being able to work on these skills. On the other hand, the downside to that is that there is no opportunity for being able to have any downtime to become better and better and better in these areas because things happen so fast and they change so quickly. So my thoughts on the state of journalism today are just simply it's as with everything, it's very, 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 very dynamic, and that anyone who wants to go out there and write a sentence one way or another, whatever that looks like, just needs to be open to change and being able to, pivot on a dime, on something very short and quick and fast, regardless of age. People who feel uncomfortable with change, regardless again of industry, is just not going to be anything that they can succeed in. 24-hour news channels, that's not anything that's new recently, but it's new in the sense of there's just a lot of content that has to be created all the time. So sometimes there is no news, but there's just kind of sensationalism that is expounded. And specifically to the aspect about fake news, the more that I understand especially about the platforms, for example, like Facebook and Instagram, the more that I understand about the algorithms and the more I understand about the aspect of how news or content is delivered to people on platforms like that, the more uncomfortable it feels about the idea about fake news because I'm very, I have a discerning eye, but I don't know if something's quote unquote fake or not. I will have to dig into something to, do a few more clicks to get into it to see if it is a legitimate media source and what that looks like because the barriers to entry for journalism today are very low. but the area of success are very high. And that's my thoughts and my feelings about it.
Well, thank you for sharing that. It kind of reaffirms my belief that I'm just going to stay away from it. One thing I thought about recently, if you want to know what's going on in the news, read a history book, because it's probably just repeating something that, you know what I mean? So, well, that's good. Thank you for sharing that. So you went to U of A, you got your journalism degree, and you had your minor in English. And how did you end up in Taiwan, of all places?
I know, it's very random, especially for a person that grew up here in the Southwest, and my world did not consist of this cosmopolitan type of direction, like living in San Francisco or New York City. Like, there's just not a lot of diversity going on in Phoenix. There's a lot more now, but there certainly wasn't when I was growing up in the 70s and 80s. And so, like, thinking about going to Asia was like very random, like very random. And, but I had one of my girlfriends from college. She studied Chinese and political science. She'd been to China several times, and actually even, like, really when it was very, very much communist with a capital C, China, and had been to Taiwan also. And that particular summer, she was getting kind of seeing who she could rally together to go over to Taiwan with her. And so she's like, "Hey, I'm going to go to Taiwan this summer. Do you want to go?" I'm like, "Oh, I don't know. That's maybe okay. I'll go for a couple months." And certainly was not just a couple months. I did go for a couple months, and recognized that it was such a wonderful growth opportunity for myself. I had not realized, there would be no way for me to realize, but I had not realized how much of who I was or believed that I was actually wrapped up around being American and American values and American thinking and philosophy. So being in a country in Asia where it is not Western country, it's an Eastern country. It is Far Eastern, and it's the whole very, very long, long time of civilization and long time of people and traditions and information. And, no one looked like me, and no one spoke like I did. And, there wasn't a lot of like chips and salsa being eaten there and what I grew up with, and just a lot of different things. But the more that I was there, the more that I grew and just kept expanding myself and giving myself the opportunity to keep exploring new things. So I actually ended up, I'm no longer married, but I actually ended up meeting my husband there. We dated 3 years, and then we got married in a traditional Chinese ceremony. Went and lived with his family. So several generations. I think there were 13 of us living in the family house, and definitely living a different life than, as a traditional United States or Western lifestyle. So, as I said, just went over there on a fluke, thought I'd just be there for a little while, and ended up staying 6 years and learning the language and building a life there, and taking on the teaching career. And I have my teaching certificate also in teaching English as a second language. So just a lot more than I thought I was going to get into when I said, sure, I guess I'll go. That sounds kind of interesting way back when. But I'm glad I did. And it was really nothing, as I said, but a great learning opportunity and experience for myself.
You mentioned earlier that fear ruled your life, so that must have helped you overcome some of that fear, because that's a big change. It's like going to another world.
Yep, it certainly was. Yeah, and very much being uncomfortable, very, very, because like nothing isn't familiar, right? Like nothing's familiar. The food's not familiar. The people aren't familiar. The language isn't familiar. The religion's not familiar. Like nothing is familiar.
So how did being engrossed in that culture for 6 years change your view of the U.S. and our culture?
Well, I don't think, I mean, it changed my view of the U.S. and our culture, but it actually changed my view of world culture. So by being outside of the United States for a long time and being basically an expat, but not living an expat like, hey, I'm in this other country and I'm making $100,000 a year. Like I'm living in, I'm enmeshed, I'm embedded into that culture. seeing so much of all the things that all people of all different kinds and cultures all have in common. I had an opportunity to interact with lots of different people. So I wasn't just interacting with people from Taiwan and ethnically Chinese people. There were a lot of international people there too, and a lot of Western people too. So just like learning more about the United States and our history, and then how, what Canadians thought about it, or what people from the UK thought about it, or what people from Australia thought about it, or people from Sweden or Switzerland or Germany, like Western type of cultures and civilizations also, in addition to people from Taiwan and China and Hong Kong and Singapore and Japan and Korea. So just being able to see much more of a larger world view. And how did it change my opinion or my thinking about the United States? Just again, just having much more of a macro idea about the United States and starting to have much more of an idea about how things move and change in the United States, not positively or negatively, but just the aspects of it. And then why are they different in the United States versus other countries? For example, not one small thing, but a thing about the United States is we have a lot of land in the United States. Well, that's not a lot of, other countries don't have as much land. So for example, like in Taiwan, people are concentrated in few cities. Well, how does a concentrated people in a few cities, how does that change the culture of the people? Just, I'm not saying getting into anything deeper philosophical, but just like, things like that, just kind of think about it or looking at it from that macro aspect, that big picture aspect, and then drilling down to, smaller picture. Like I said, my family had just been in the Southwest. We didn't move around a lot. We didn't interact there wasn't a lot of diversity going on the way that I grew up. So it was just a big learning experience.
Well, the space thing is interesting because for those that's never been to the Southwest, we have a lot of space here, even more so than the East Coast.
Yes, a lot.
Of the United States. Yeah, so that's one thing I love about this area is there's a lot of open space. Now, how did you end up leaving Taiwan, and what was the situation there, and how did you end up back in the States, and how do you move your whole family and everything? How does that all happen?
Let's see. We had I had my children in the United States, so I didn't have children while I was overseas. My husband and I had dated for 3 years before we got married, and we got married, and then I continued to live there for another 3 years after getting married. And in fact, it's just a totally side note. One of my brothers came over there to Taiwan to visit me, and he actually ended up staying also. So he stayed there for 3 years. So I was there for 6, and then I had my brother there for 3. So that was really wonderful. I actually had a cousin come and stay with me for like 6 months also after she finished high school, just as something different. So just still being far away, but still being able to have family around me, which was really nice. I came back to the United States. My husband and I at that time, I needed to figure out we didn't know what our relationship would look like if we came back to the United States and lived in my culture. So we came back here and lived here and in my culture. And that's what brought us back, and being back with my family as well. And I came back here. When I came back here, started thinking, got involved with my family's businesses. My parents are divorced, but they did the same thing once they got divorced. They still had retail stores. So being open to working with them in the retail stores, that's not what I do anymore. But again, that opportunity of that moving in line to working with my family for that next generation. So I'd say a part of it is that, again, in my marriage and relationship, being able to come back to the United States and be in my culture and having that experience together in my culture. And then a little bit after I came back, had the idea to apply for graduate school because I had this world vision or global vision and direction. And that's when I applied to graduate school for Thunderbird School of Global Management, and ended up getting my MBA degree in international business with a focus on international marketing. and being able to leverage the experience that I had overseas in the Asian culture and the Chinese culture, and knowing Chinese language, as well as the business aspect. And as I said, applying the marketing information that I learned in business school as well.
I think ASU owns the Thunderbird Global Management School now. Is that correct?
Correct. Yes. In 2014.
But I know at one time it was considered a very prestigious school. Is that correct?
Correct.
As well.
Mm-hmm.
So did that open a lot of doors for you, getting an MBA from there?
It did. Yeah, it did. Yes, it was consistently ranked as one of the top business schools focusing on global business in the world. And, going back to that fear aspect and that self-doubt, that was a big, big, big part of it, Rich. When applying to business school, I mean, you've heard me, we've talked today about my undergraduate experience and my time overseas. Like, you've not heard me talk about business. I'm like, I took these English classes. I took these reading classes. I was a teacher for English as a second. I am not talking about like, hey, I started doing this import. Like, I was not associated with business at all. So thinking like, oh my gosh, a school like Thunderbird, why would they admit me? And then I don't have any business background. But that's not how it turned out. I was admitted and really do appreciate and really learned a lot, and fantastic opportunity at the school, and fantastic professors that I had, and did it open up a lot of doors. I think life is everything as you make it. So being able to, for myself, have knowledge of business and being able to have knowledge about international business did open up doors. And again, having the experience overseas. So I definitely had some strong experience with some strong brands in the United States that were international brands, which is a really fortunate opportunity and experience as well.
So all the while this is going on, you're in Taiwan, and then you come back and you go to Thunderbird. There was something else going on in the background. Do you mind talking about it?
No, not at all.
So when did things, some of the other issues you had going on, when did that begin to become a problem for you, and what was going on?
One of the things, which I've learned a lot, is that tools. So I mentioned earlier about a tissue box or a toolbox. So, today I have tools to be able to move through life, and I have a lot of support around life, and I've created that and I've built that, but that was not always the case. I looked to, at one point in my life, I crossed the line of drinking, from drinking normally, so to speak, and socially and casually, to drinking alcoholically. And I look back now, going back to the aspect of fear was ruling my life. I didn't know that. I didn't know those words at the time, but I can see that now. I was in so much fear, worried about work. I was actually, in my marriage, I was the one that supported us. My husband stayed home with the kids, took care of the house. Like I said, raise the kids, cook, clean, all of those traditional quote unquote female roles, which is not typical for an Asian. And not that it makes any difference. These are just the dynamics between us. And I was the one who worked. That was my strength. That was my comfort zone. And a lot of my work, and again, I have the words around that now and what I've learned. And I work 12-step recovery and AA and 12-step recovery program as a blueprint for living for my life now. But at that time, I just lived that life of quote unquote entitlement. I didn't think it was entitlement. That's not what I thought, but I worked a lot. I traveled a lot. I was at a lot of trade shows. I went to business with lots of clients. It was just a lot of that aspect of high pressure life and high responsibility life as well. And that was, as things got more difficult between us and my marriage, I no longer was drinking just casually or socially. I started to look at that as the tool. Some type of, I wanted some relief because I was so miserable and had so much stress or anxiety and depression that I was looking for some relief. and I didn't know how to get relief. So for me, I turned to alcohol. At the end of my drinking career, as the words go, I was drinking all the time. My kids were young. I drank alcoholically between 2009 to 2012. And it's not an excuse. It's just information that's also that's the time that my marriage was ending. Stuff was difficult at work. Just a lot of just life things were happening. Um, my kids were 6 and 8 when I got divorced, and they were 8 and 10 when I went into the rooms of 12-step recovery into AA. And when I was, as I said, at the worst of my drinking, I woke up and I would be drinking, and I'd be making my kids breakfast and drinking, and I'd drive them to school and be drinking, and I'd be at work and I'd be drinking, and I'd drive home and I'd have to stop and get some alcohol, and I'd take them to baseball practice and I'd be drinking, and I'd be at having their friends over and I'd be drinking because I just couldn't handle life. I'm not looking for anyone to be all mommy shaming or anything, or, judging me about it. And that's not for me to decide or for me to control. That's not at all. I'm just saying, like, that was the desperation of my life. And that was the direction that it was. I didn't feel I had a choice. I do now, but I didn't feel at that time that I had a choice in being able to move through each day without having alcohol with me from the time that I woke up until the time that I went to bed. I didn't have consequences from my alcoholism. That's not here nor there. I don't have any DUIs or an arrest record or anything like that. I also have come to recognize that those are yets. And I just celebrated 7 years of sobriety. I don't know if today I'll drink. I don't think I will, but I have different tools today to help me to get through those times where life is difficult, because life is still life, but I have different tools today, and that's not a solution that I choose.
The thing I've learned is that the alcohol, the drugs or whatever, that's not the source of the problem. That's the symptom. What was the source of your problem? Did it go back to this fear thing, or did life got so overwhelming you didn't know where to turn?
Yeah, you're right, Rich. That's what I've learned also. So where I'm looking for some type of comfort from alcohol, I'm looking for some type of comfort from drugs, I'm looking for some type of comfort from people, whatever that is. I'm looking for something outside myself to give me some comfort, because not learning coping skills, communication skills, life skills. So where does that come from? It comes from me. I'm the problem. Where did I learn it? Actually, everything that I told you is true and is accurate about the way that I grew up. But there's one more aspect to that, is that I didn't grow up in an alcoholic home. There really wasn't very much drinking at all, but I grew up in a domestic violence home. And so there was just a lot of instability and a lot of not having a strong foundation of emotional stability and comfort in the home, along with, clear boundaries or clear communication or positive communication or respect. And so, as I said earlier, in the first question, what was modeled to me and what was said, that's what was modeled to me, was just, instability and not being able to move through difficulties in a way that is more respectful and comforting to those around you. So, as I said, I'm the problem, but I'm also the solution. So it's a choice today. And I'm not just spouting these things off as a cliche. I've learned throughout these 7 years that having the 12 steps, as they say, for a blueprint of living, helps my life be better. And not just my life, but those around me. So those around me, including my kids, as I said, who are now 14 and 17 and were 8 and 10 when I went into the rooms of AA. And I took them to lots of meetings, and they would just sit there with like their laptop with the headphones on or something like that, or play video games with the headphones on, or they'd sit in another room. But that's what they've seen for a long time. Also, they see me move through life every day now, not turning to drugs, alcohol, people for a solution. They see me moving through difficulties. And not only that, the way that I move through life, as I said earlier, is being of service to others and being there for other women. So that's another thing that I model to them that wasn't modeled to me. So, what's the symptom? The alcohol is just a symptom. As I've learned, I'm the problem, but I've learned I'm also the solution, as I said. So being able to say, what's my choice today?
Well, you've mentioned the 12-step program many times. Most people are somewhat familiar with it. It's part of our culture in a lot of ways. But if someone didn't know what the 12-step program or what the 12 steps are, how would you explain it to them?
Good question. I read a lot, not read a lot, but I read information or subscribe to some newsletters and stuff surrounding addiction, because addiction actually is a very big part of the culture now. And I don't think that that's going to be going down anytime soon, if not getting worse and worse, simply because, even going back to the question about journalism and what is journalism, or really what does media look like today, social media, involvement, interactions, building relationships, learning how to be relational with people, just not learning skills along those lines as kids and families. And how would I explain 12 steps? So I was just going to say, there's a lot of things in controversy surrounding 12 steps, because maybe it doesn't work for everyone and there are other opportunities, but it is a peer-based way of moving through different difficulties and listening to others who have been in that same situation that you've been in. These people are not, my experience in meetings, people are not experts. They're simply addicts, alcoholics, whatever, fill in the blank. And they don't want to live that way anymore. So that's the way that I was too. Like, hey, I don't know what to do. How do you do this? Looking to peers and moving through these 12 steps, but moving through each different direction with a guide or a mentor to be able to, again, lead you in that direction. So it's recognizing that I have a problem, basically recognizing that I have a problem, that I've probably messed up a whole bunch of people's lives, including my own. And how do I make myself better by working with others, or being open to being accepting and working with others. And that includes being open and working with someone who's going to mentor me and give me some ideas on how they got out of that problem as well. When I'm open and I'm willing to learn new things, I get better. When I'm closed and not willing to learn new things, I stay stuck in the fear. Like I was saying, stuck in the fear, or still stay stuck in the problem, as we say. So I would just say that a 12-step way of living is a way of working with, being aligned with others, having other people, like I said, mentors mentor you through difficulties, and where you're acknowledging, like, I don't want to live this way anymore. How do I learn new skills? I recognize that I've probably made a lot of bad decisions and hurt people. So how do I stop hurting people? And maybe I can apologize to those people I've hurt. And how do I start being a better person? And that's for me, Rich. That's where I want to be. I want to be a better person. I want to be a better version of myself today than I was yesterday. And I can't do that by myself. Because I always say, if all I'm doing is breathing my own air, then all I'm doing is breathing my own air. I need to get fresh air. And that's what other people showed me, like a different way of looking at things, or a different way of doing things.
Well, congratulations on 7 years of sobriety.
Thank you.
And I think you're welcome. And I think that perspective is a great one. You can't breathe your own air.
Yeah.
Because, what one thing I've learned too, just through, going through my own hero's journeys, is that there is no alone. I mean, we're interdependent on everything. And whether you realize it or not, there's no just you. You're not alone. It's everything's connected to a certain degree. And And so this idea that you're all alone, you're on your own, it's just not possible. It just isn't how the way things work.
Yeah, I agree. And that's not the way I want them to work anyway. I've learned how to build relationships. I've learned how to have friendships. I've learned how to be relational as a mother. I've learned how to do these things. And my life is much better now than it was before.
Well, I'm sure. I'm sure. So you got yourself sober and straightened out and got on the road of recovery. Where were you at career wise? And the main reason I asked that is I know you at one point you worked for Facebook,
Mm-hmm.
and I was curious. Facebook is so much a part of so many people's lives. What's it like working for Facebook?
Well, I had been sober for 3 years prior to moving into that role. So first and foremost, just for clarity, Facebook's it's very siloed. So where I worked was very siloed, and there's not interdependence with other parts of the company or organization. That being said, also the area that I worked in was not at corporate. So I was not in California. I was not at corporate headquarters. I was not in Menlo Park. The role I had, so like, even though I have that education, the background regarding international business and my MBA, that was not anything that was required for the role that I had. What was required was having business knowledge and people skills and being able to learn about the platform. So, but working for the company, the role that I had, like I said, was very siloed. And what's really impressive about the company is that it can move and change so quickly. And for an organization of that size, I think that there's like about 30,000 employees worldwide. To be able to change direction so quickly and so fast, it is just phenomenal. So the reason why I'm saying that, the division that I worked in was working with digital advertising with clients. So basically being an account manager, I had my own client book and my own client base and work with those clients. And hey, what do you want to do? You want to sell more t-shirts? Okay, let's talk about like, what should we do and how do we do that better? And let's work on this and collaborate together. What I was going to say though, is that in my area that I was working in, is that if Facebook wanted to change something, let's just say our client base went quarter to quarter ish. But for example, if going into fourth quarter, Facebook wanted to test, like, how does Facebook interact with, let's just say, bakers, people who bake things or have cupcake shops. I mean, I'm just making that up off the top of my head. But if that's what they wanted to test, then they simply would say, everyone you've already been doing business with, like, you're not doing business with them anymore. For the next 3 months, for the next 4 months, we're going to concentrate on just seeing like testing. We're going to just use to see what happens with using our advertising products and people, and testing with just bakers and people who have cupcake shops. Again, I'm just making that up. That's not a reality. But my point is if they want to test something, they can do that very quickly and very easily. And like I said, a company that size, in order for them, because it's all data driven, so for them to get data back, do the analysis, I don't ever know, of course, what the strategic direction or conversations were, but I know enough about business to understand, like, there are definitely strategic conversations and directional conversations that are had around those proverbial conference room tables that dictate what is the testing. The other thing, just to mention, which everyone knows about Facebook, is that it's just, there's not a lot of transparency. And I'm not saying it positively or negatively. It's just simply my experience, and it's simply an observation. And by keeping silos, that keeps the aspect of non-transparency strong enough within that organization. So, and the last thing about it is just, there's just a lot, because it's technology and it's changing so fast. Again, you've got to change. You've got to quickly move. You can't be stuck, and you've got to be able to be open to change. And things just are so fast all the time. So, that leads to a lot of anxiety and a lot of stress and a lot of different things too.
So is that what led you to start your own company, Next Right Thing Marketing, which is from the 12-step program? Is that what led you to do that? Or you just wanted to do something on your own?
No, they actually closed down the area that I was working in. So they didn't close it. They just said, hey, if you want to do this, as I said earlier, I live in the Phoenix, Arizona area. And the way that the company was, the role that I had, I was able to live in Phoenix and do that role. And they just changed, and they just said, if you want to keep this role, then you need to move to Austin, because we want everybody to be in Austin at our office in Austin to be able to do that same role. And it wasn't anything that I was going to be able to do at that point in my life. So no controversy or any anything negative about that change. It was just an opportunity that of moving to Texas and Austin that I wasn't able to pursue. So being able to take that knowledge and then being able to go out on my own for Next Right Thing Marketing.
For Next Right Thing Marketing, you're targeting small business owners, and I think that's important because, as you mentioned earlier, the Facebook and the Instagram advertising, among other things, is not easy. What's the one thing, the most important thing you could tell someone about digital marketing?
Ooh, good question. One of the biggest things that I can tell people about digital marketing is that it's not traditional marketing. So you can't apply the same lens to it as you would traditional marketing. And so what I mean by that is, time and time again, I will be working with clients or have communication or conversations with clients, and the first thing out of their mouth is like, what's going to be my ROI, my return on investment? If I give you $100, what's going to be my return on that investment of $100? I'm like, I don't know. Not because I don't know, but because it's not how it works. And what I mean by that is, I know what I can control with advertising, digital advertising. I know what I can control. I can control my budget, $100 or $100,000. I can control that. I can control the picture, having a picture that is a cute picture of a kitty cat, having a picture of a book that's just laying on a table. I can control that. I can control the words that I have in my ad. Hey, buy our book now, buy one book, get 2 books free, or, click on the kitty cat and get some special cat treat. I mean, I don't know, right? I'm just making that up. But I can control those things. I cannot control what I cannot control. So I cannot control Google changing Google AdWords on changing any of their analytics, any of their platform that'll change the analytics. I can't control that. I can't control how many advertisers are trying to go after the same people at the same time. I can't control that. I can't control if Facebook decides that they want to test, like I said, cupcake makers. And so now all of a sudden I'm working with Joe's Plumbing, and they've decided to not show content from Joe's Plumbing because they want to test to see what happens if they pay more attention to cupcake makers. I can't control that. So the reason why I'm saying is, what's the biggest takeaway is when I work with my clients is to say, let's work on managed expectations. Like I just said, these are the things I can control. These are the things I can't control. Let's work on managed expectations. If you give me $100, what's that ROI? I don't know. But I can tell you that what I've learned in digital marketing is that there's 2 players that successfully convert, work well for advertising, and that's Google. And that's going to be what I've called a sprint approach. And if you think about it, that's exactly the same way that you use it and I use it as consumers. I'm hungry right now. Where's the closest pizza place? I look on there, I get the pizza place phone number, I call, and I'm off Google. That's a sprint. Or Facebook. And when I say Facebook, I'm talking about the Facebook products of Facebook, Messenger, Instagram, and WhatsApp, those 4 platforms. And being on Facebook, the advertising is much more of a marathon approach. So most importantly, being able to work with people so that they understand that. So it's not just of, hey, I gave $100. What's my ROI? It's going back to that strategy of, let's talk about your strategy for your small business. How do you want to grow it, and what does that look like? And I want to be your partner for that and collaborate with you for that. Because as you mentioned, it's very, 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 very easy and simple to waste your money on Facebook, Instagram advertising, because it's very complex and more difficult. But it is, like I said, a situation where more conversation, in my experience, and that's the way that I move through my business with Next Right Thing, is to collaborate and partner with my clients. I actually have a relationship with one of the strong thought leaders in the social media environment, in the Facebook marketing expert and expertise. And she goes around the country and goes around the world talking about this exact kind of thing, presents to audiences of, hundreds of people, thousands of people. In fact, was the keynote speaker at the last social media marketing world conference and convention in San Diego in the spring. And she just reached out to me yesterday and said, hey, Louie, I'm putting together a group of experts for August to speak to a group that I have of about 5,000 people worldwide. And I'd like you to be on that group of experts. Wow. Like, that feels really great. But my point is like, here is like someone who makes their living off of being an expert and travels around the world and is sitting there saying, how can we help more people understand the complexity of this information? And what Louie, I'd like you to bring your expertise into that so we can help more people. Because it's not about, here's $100, how many t-shirts can I sell? The expectation is different than the reality. So I know that's kind of a long-winded answer, but that the answer is what's one piece of advice that I can tell people is like, it's not traditional marketing. That's not what it is. And most importantly, I know that this sounds really self-serving, but it's to be able to work with someone that really can help you as a business owner navigate through that difficulty and that complexity to be able to help you succeed.
Well, congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Well, let me ask you something that affects all of us. Now, if you don't think this affects you, if you have a smartphone and you use it, this affects you. Let's talk about data rights. Do you ever feel conflicted in doing the Facebook advertising? And I'll just share with you my thoughts. And this is from my point of view. And, my point of view is sometimes a little more rebel.
Okay.
But to me, Facebook, Google, and all these other companies, they should be paying us because in my mind, they're taking or stealing my data and using it. What is your feelings on that? And do you believe that data rights should be under property rights or some type of human rights law or something like that? I know that's a big question, but I mean, this is your business.
Yeah. So I'm not taking, yes, I'll answer that question in a second, but I'm not taking sides. I'm not going one way or the other. But Rich, how much do you pay to use Facebook or Instagram or Google or Twitter?
I pay in the fact that they use my data.
It's an exchange, right? That's the contract.
I guess I didn't realize that then, but I realize it now.
Right. So as I said, I'm not taking sides or sticking up for the aspect, but the reality is that it's free. And it's free for me to use, and it's free for me to be able to build my business on and advertise in a manner that I can control somewhat. And the exchange for that, as I said, is the contract of like, I can hang out and be engaged with people freely and promote my business in a free manner. And the exchange is all the data that you guys can get. On data rights, you know, I'm gonna, and I don't know, and this is just talking off the top of my head. I'm guessing that this is just something that's much more cultural versus anything that is something that is more along the lines of that is global. So where in the United States, and again, just talking off the top of my head, I don't know what I'm talking about, but in the United States where freedom and independence is such a strong part of our culture, and even that aspect of pulling myself up by my own bootstraps kind of thing, right? Where I've said, and you said, like, I need to live in community. I need to work with others and not just thinking I could do this all by myself. But that's certainly a big part of the culture of the United States. And as I said, freedom and independence and that concept of privacy. I think, again, I'm just talking off the top of my head. I think it's really cultural in our sense and in our feeling about it, because those are the messages that we've had, is that that's privacy and we have the right to that privacy. And you don't have the right to that information about me because it's private. But I think the reality is, my feeling is that, how do I say this? Big data's, we don't have a choice. So it's just what it is. I don't have a choice, but big data is going to rule our lives and rule our decisions and rule whatever our choices may be. I can't control that. I can't even not only not have that in my life. It's not the same thing, but it's a small example. It's not the same thing, but a small example. I don't have cable at my house. I have the internet. I do have the internet. I don't have cable at my house. The cable's by choice. I do have broadcast TV with an antenna on top of the roof, way back in the day, what the heck, an antenna on top of the roof. Well, what I was going to say is that, analog TV and an antenna on top of the roof was just fine. Like, nothing was wrong with it. And it worked for many, 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 many decades. And then technology is like, hey, we're going to be sending digital signals through the airwaves and no longer sending analog. So if you want to watch broadcast TV, you need to change your TVs to digital TVs to receive the signal. But nothing was wrong with that. I didn't have a choice about it. And so, like I said, it's not the same example. It's not the right analogy, but it's the idea of like, nothing was wrong with it, but I don't have a choice. So whereas big data is going to be ruling our decisions and ruling our lives, I don't have a choice about that. And data rights, I think data rights, and like you said, as a consumer, you had no idea that that's what it was. Well, I went back, going back to my statement. What was it like working at Facebook, or what is Facebook like? It's very opaque. And I'm not saying anything negatively against Facebook. It's just opaque. And what do they provide? It's a publicly traded company. They provide information based on their finances. And that's what needs to be transparent as a publicly traded company. Amazon is getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. I had a conversation the other day. Someone has asked me, hey, Louie, do you think you'd be interested in kind of like learning more about Amazon business and Amazon advertising on Amazon, and that you could learn some of that information and present information on that and share that and help other small businesses? I'm like, I don't know. I talked to someone whom I really respect and has a lot of background in this area. And I said, hey, what do you know about Amazon business and Amazon advertising? And his response was like, more than I ever thought I would want to. And his specific statement was that he specifically looked at business success on Amazon for about 3 years. And he lived, actually, I met him in Taiwan, and in graduate school, we crossed paths also. And so he's very strong in his Chinese language and built a lot of career in import and export and all that kind of stuff. So that's right up the alley for everything about Amazon. And he said, basically, if you think Facebook is opaque Amazon is like 4 times as dark, and not dark like negative, but just like you're never going to be able to understand anything about that. And that's all about the data rights. When every time I'm on Amazon, it's all being collected, all being collected. I don't have a choice unless I just don't go on those platforms. So, my feeling is that it's naive to think that there is any kind of control or ownership of data, because it's all been being collected for a long time. Do I feel nervous about the future and a big brother type of thing? And what does that look like? Again, that world already exists today, like with CCTVs all around the world and in big cities and on street corners and different things like that. I can't control that. I can just, for me, what can I control? I can control the way that I move through life and help my kids be engaged. And I'm not just trying to say that flippantly or just kind of off the cuff, but families today and society going forward is going to look very, very, very different, Rich, than the way that you and I grew up because of communication or lack of communication and interpersonal skills. So there's only 2 people that I still have control over for a few more years, or at least a few more months with the 17-year-old until he's 18. But having them engage with conversations, having face-to-face, put your phones down, different things like that. They both are actually involved in teen leadership, peer leadership training, where they are learning the things that I said that I didn't learn as a teenager, learning about boundaries, learning about healthy communication, learning about healthy friendships, learning about coping skills and tools. I'm grateful for that opportunity, and I see some other kids, but it's just overall, data is data and data right is not anything that I'm going to be able to stop or control. And even people think like, well, I'm going to use a different browser because they can't really track me. Everything's trackable. I mean, everything's trackable. You listen to some big cases that are broken. I mean, people get into the dark net and the dark web, which, is really highly encrypted, but still things are traced and found. So it's, my head is spinning. My head is spinning.
Right. I think that's the issue is that, I think eventually there's going to have to be some type of legislation about it. How do you do that globally? I have no idea. But as you said, these things change and move so quickly. And these companies are very, as you said, opaque that the legislatures, they don't understand it. So how are they going to make laws to control it? Because they don't understand it.
Yeah. It takes government a lot longer, right? And Facebook can change and pivot a lot faster than the United States government can.
Absolutely. And, the thing too is, you say Big Brother's already happening. Well, the one thing that Orwell got wrong is it's not going to be dark and oppressive. It's going to be bright and shiny.
Yeah, I hope so. Yeah.
It's going to be cat videos.
Yeah, I know.
Funny cat videos.
I know more.
That's Big Brother.
Yeah. Hashtag more cowbell.
Yeah.
Hashtag more cat videos.
Yeah, right. That's Big Brother.
Yeah.
It's bright and shiny.
Yeah. Oh, this is great.
Yeah, right. Well, I appreciate you sharing your views. I mean, I know that's what you do. And so do you feel conflicted at times with it or you just, this is how it is. I'm going to work with the system as it is now.
This is how it is. This is the system that I need to work with. And how can I help other people to have some success at it?
Well, and then from a marketing standpoint, Facebook marketing is difficult to beat. Is that a fair assessment? Because they have so much data.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, if you're a marketer, if you're not on Facebook, you're missing a tremendous opportunity. But
and Instagram too.
But we need someone like you because it changes. One thing could be one way in the morning, and it could be a different thing in the afternoon. Is that correct?
Literally. Yep. I just watched a speaker yesterday and they said, well, it's a really hard time literally right now to be a marketer on Facebook, Instagram advertising because everybody's actually, there's about 12 different versions of the platform that are happening at any one time. So if I'm working with you, Rich, and I'm saying, hey, let's do a screen share, and you open up your screen on my computer, on your computer, and we're doing a screen share, I'm like, wow, I've never seen that before. And you would be like, this morning it was different. And now, like, wow, I don't know what I'm looking at. Yes, you're right. A very strong assessment that it changes fast and can change in the afternoon.
Well, I want to say to anyone that's listening to this, that's a small business owner or a solopreneur or even an entrepreneur, you need someone like Louie because you can't keep up with it. You would spend your whole day doing it.
Yeah, make yourself crazy. Yeah, I appreciate you saying
Right.
that. Yeah, I appreciate you
Well,
saying that.
I don't have time, nor do I want to have time to do that. It's not possible.
I know. That's what my business mentor always keeps saying. She's like, Louie, don't tell everybody everything when you talk to them. You've got to save, some of the secrets for later. I'm like, look, Carrie, I could tell everyone everything and they still won't know. They still need me. They still need my expertise. There's still like a lot for me to like. She's like, okay.
Oh, absolutely. I've learned that. I've gone to a few of your talks and workshops. That's the one thing I learned is that if I want to do Facebook marketing or Instagram marketing, I need someone like you because I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah, because it's very easy to lose money very easily, even though you like learn a little bit more. As I say, I hear a lot of times like I've learned just enough to be dangerous, and I've learned just enough to know that I don't want to learn more.
I don't want to lose any more money. I don't want to throw away money.
Exactly. Well, in fact, I've got a workshop coming up. I'm calling it the ABCs of Instagram. And the ABCs of Instagram are A for advertising, B for business development, and C for customer engagement. And Instagram is different from Facebook. And I don't mean that like that's where the kids hang out and that's where the old people hang out on Facebook. But they're very different in the way of strategically how do you approach the two platforms. So I do have that workshop coming up, a real quick 90-minute workshop, just kind of a drop in, hear a couple things, hopefully walk away with some things in your pocket that you can implement that day. That's coming up August 22nd up here in Scottsdale, Arizona area. And so, just again, like I said, being able to help other people, other business owners, just to get to learn some more things and get them to the point where like, hey, yeah, I don't want to do this. Louie, help me out with this. What does that look like?
One thing, that's interesting about Instagram. Now, I complain about the data rights and everything, but, of all the social media platforms, I like Instagram the best personally. I don't know why, but I catch myself and I'll look back at the time. I go, my God, I just wasted 20 minutes on this, but I like it. Mm-hmm. So it'll be in the show notes, but how can someone find you to use your services and to tap into your expertise?
Yeah, well, thanks. The easiest way to find me, and I do have a contact page on my website or any of the workshops that I have, I've got those right on the front landing page. So you can click on those and sign up for those or RSVP for those. So, and my website is NRT, Marketing Solutions with an S.com. And NRT stands for Next Right Thing. But again, it's NRT Marketing Solutions.com. And being able to go on there and just learn a little bit more about me or just be able to contact me or reach out and really happy to be able to help people and talk to people. And as I said, I've got the workshop link there or any other workshops that I have coming up as well.
Well, thank you for being on the show, and thank you for being open and frank about your background and which, the data rights and all that. Thank you for being open about that. And one thing I've learned too is if you're more vulnerable with people, especially in business, they'll be more attracted to you because we all struggle. We all have our hero's journeys that we're trying to get through.
Yeah, so you're welcome. And I agree. I'd love to think like I'm super unique and special and a little rainbow unicorn. And I may be a rainbow unicorn and I may be special and unique in some ways and in some directions. But overall, I know that I struggle with all the same things that other people struggle with. And really appreciate the opportunity to talk with you today and your listeners for listening and being able to be of service and help others move through their day and move through their journey as well.
Thank you again for listening. And please leave any comments or suggestions. We're always looking for ways to improve our show and make it the best show it can possibly be. Visit mindfulaccord.com, where you can find additional episodes and you can follow our blog. We give some helpful information on mindfulness, meditation, and just ways to manage our everyday stressful lives. And most importantly, if you know of a friend or a family member that would benefit from this story, please share it with them. Until next time, I'm Rich Decker.